the field might be very interesting right now. That it might have been like in or some sort of like a stomach situation arising in like understanding like it might have considering like understanding or to that and like the one like what but like that the case might have been that like I'm noticing that it might have been a scenario where like understanding even from a very young age even when understanding of like a child that I'm understanding might have sort of like from that little time on calendar that might have heard of like the war and like the about mechanized work that since then itself like it might have been more effective and might have been the child might have been like expected to render to it since then itself actually then it might have been those really inspired by the piece of works that mechanized watch and that even since then that the might have been extremely fascinated and might have had that approach to that well, it is was like a my watch went to sort of might have been that the case that we must then. So like it might have been that fashion which might have been it might have grown the customer visit from a very young age, which might have remained or like might have only gone strong as like the grew up so like the me but the injury and person right now is like without like now realizing that I'm depending on the data that might have sent a similar letter to Raven to most likely underspent before like underspent when of course is like mission. I mean, it might have been what might have happened that even and like that level might have contained like adapt like to have snow being some snow being definitely be put into that for like the job of like to what might have been along the line of like the that adapt might have expressed to underspent might have been what might have happened to Sydney or the which is like that way it might have been underrated that according to that might have followed going to like adapt with those different for like we have repeatedly played to that the senior player at like the work to that shift uh, Steward those things to that during the system but like regardless of how much like we played to that deal with that like a different like in that we allowance to that be the range of at that way I'm going to bring you the region of coming in at that point I'm going to bring also selected range of like setting out for the range of mission and like at that point I'm going to bring like when grand I'm going to bring going also the other ranges for like the range of mission and at that point I'm going to bring grand innocently believing that like going to the number of requirements and basically grand saying that number of requirements to like so they experienced really finger disappointed in lacting, even that point in lacting not being able to let go down with like like was not that of everything. But like I'm point during that point of like in like the window, I'm going to bring that for like the loss of that current to like what like happened by the white purposes like spinning that I'm going to bring. And the I'm going to bring that to that needs to like really hit up screen, but then after with extreme shock for like the small example like the new scenario that I'm going to that way I'm solidifying at that point like more even more badly that at that point like leading and to lack the cleanup and like the world that like to change to a range of the freedom brand but like I'm putting that league due to what might be upon the matter that future form which adopt might have given like I'm looking like more long being shifted from to one question to like arrange the things like not that I'm looking so like definitely I'm doing like while working as like a two order level like Sam and like the world like at two step fast like I'm going to connect and like hearing more and more news like more and more range of games brought down along like more and more ranges happening with like hypnotic that so like that way I'm thinking really like the user I'm monitoring for like the number of constantly the number for like user like the white like the number of ranges like coming extremely down and really decreasing sharply decreasing to like the point where like along like towards like the fourth from like the towards the strength to like a range of chips that totally could get from like them towards the like to train the question like was not that about so like at that point when I'm delivering right now for like for to be most likely to get that like Sam as well as like given to be that it would be changed from like Steward from the Steward person to like arrange the problem. So that at that point I'm talking fundamental sense that when I'm delivering for like similar to like finally the relay and that and like he finally got this like arrange a job. But like at that point I'm lately I'm looking like Sam I'm trying to be feeling extremely scared especially by the number of unfortunate credits so looking for like the repeated news of like the ranges until then to set up like uh there are running like one by one as like each paper like repeated news that would be sharing, would have fight and share so much like the narrative that would be so like one maybe into the account of permission that exams might be getting shifted, hopefully shifted from towards like a range of like like so that when like now the Sam I'm looking trying to be getting absolutely fearful of like the range of the but like at that point, I'm looking for like not to be like the one to be giving that up with private training for that Sam and ensuring that like by the time they have like set off from their range of job like Sam is like prepared to be prepared to like the maximum of like ability that like the serious like the person is like with the not like and that way like a bring like the piece of like listening but like Sam has been surviving their range of eh, like even though through grades but is like the not that up to the order like the right. So that was movement in the right now that there is a because maybe that like the top commander of like the night watch might be having actually intention at all to eventually like replace to have eventually have like to like fix success of scene like the future might be like the activity like the possibility can go like I'm still in my friend that like it might have been might most likely probably will be like adapt like secret order that and to visit like the outcome and reflect the night watch might be following that order might be like active against the human and adapt might be most likely an extremely or protective path in like the video where like but adapt might have not told inadequate details but might not be of that might have not told believe like the rumors connecting certain reason rumors connecting to that the white purpose might be like that capacity and structure of the saying that might be extremely or protected in like the situation like that absence with like in like the person like that might be to or protected still feeling it might be getting off protected like that might be of like the even though the person that might be affected might be that actually far too early for like to be serving as like a range of and like the night one might be of like that might be doing supplement so like that intention might be and plan might be to like when they have the a range of or like you have the command of like the night one the top command from like the night one only one like would be at least close to like 100 seconds that age might be along the lines of like the activity of that changes and plan of that at the might be like that the case like the representation. This might be most likely even like part of the difficult form that like that might have given to like the current of command of like might be like the case of and like the current top command of the night deep down might have seen serious production might be deep down seen serious production within might be that captive in the James Conley measurements and that the top current top commander of this might be at present of that activity might be such that like he might be things as that the best and top candidate to be with like as like the document might be along the lines of like what he might be feeling the human brain. Yes, like I'm thinking might be before to like listen to like head up or I think the consideration might be like that to the secretaries the human brain. So like the name of thing in like the future and projecting for like the top command of like the nice one going to a range of mission and basically at that point I'm thinking getting badly injured but still surviving and making it back to like the walls like the which is not that appropriate. So like at that point, I'm looking while we will be in that period, like state like when like So until that point, I definitely am looking at person like what snow might be hoping for might be for like likely at most within like 2 or 3 years for like the current outcome and to like promote give that absolute promotion to like to be just like the book of like the government to be along the lines like that person might be hoping for to only take a maximum of like 2 to like 3 years for like to be become like the government might be one like maybe hoping for but like I'm that definitely not about happening. So like not that about the thing and at that point I'm to be getting extremely frustrated and basically I'm not supposed to be completely during that point that like my share point is like different like during arrangement for the like the token and getting badly injured to the point of like not being able being in such an injured situation where like won't be able to like go on anymore train the prison which like not that good. So like at that point I'm looking like desperately leading to him to have as replacing as like next stop and like the next one. But like I'm different even then I'm looking actually only going by secret sort of like even to that point, I'm not listening like for like no to not be able to like find out. It's like the scenario that I'm looking. So like it's my prediction that like it might be a secret almost like a dark. Definitely not definitely I'm looking that way in the document, even by seeing that in the next state, like replacing having this, like such a as like totally different person who would be that like would be serving as like an for example, if having instead of like as this like sort of as like the document like not then so like at that point I'm going to think that new sort of in on the friends eventually going on that range of mission and that's in on the eventually getting brought down to the great delay or being to the from command like in without a great delay or like while on a range of mission that getting brought down by purpose like like the reader can look not explainable. So like at that point I'm looking for like the X top command like in the like can totally feeling forced to like finally in the fed up of that and that like follow the basically of like following the order that will be finally him deciding to like disobey the orders of Eldar and basically and what may be the secret orders of Eldar and basically him totally appointing that given that promotion finally to like has to be like such a top on and like the scenario that I'm working. So like through such a manner how I'm working at that point in like the statistics and I'm going for like to like finally be achieve like the position of like becoming a top command like it's not that I'm doing like until that point I'm not different that smoke to be forced to that well, as like a free one is like taken this with the scenario that I was working on this very interesting for like Robert I'm going to bring it to the operating that that would be that becoming like correct thing with like in the scenario that I'm going to bring. So like at that point what like the operating is thrown like at that point I'm going to bring for like Robert Pratap being absolutely extremely iteration favorite because that has to be the point of like not being able to like be like touching and basically that lack and so I can take down all like rate expectations specifically towards like adapt and to try to like bring down adapt is that the major phenomena that I'm very interesting. So like the name of the very impressive right now is that like silent landscape might have been aware of secretly searching and getting for long and then way back. Might have been that standard of the day but never friends and silent might have been one okay with it. Might be like a case of Lehman friend. So the Lehman friend like the say might have basically like being aware even about like having found out about like the might have been like the case of Linux. So like in like the consideration of like the consideration of Robert like the level science might be knowing by now might be know it head up far too well to the point of like driving so he might be uh, expecting for like adapt to like try to attempt to like to make one of like Robert proton that connect thing. So like I might be when aware that basically that it would be most likely stand than like adapt will be attempting to like make like the next thing. So luckily I'm bring a person like Simon might have just the contacted that bail might have been what might have happened to me. Simon might have just been offered bail a lot of that money and gold in exchange for like somehow manipulating setup to that change that section and getting adapt to have Joffrey himself be like connecting might be along the lines of different that Ivan might have made pretty secret deals with like things kind of might be like that with the procedures limit frame. So that we have different like without manipulating at all like I'm so different for like the law of like chance happening it's like now that I'm doing and that we are looking for like to be the culprit to be most likely dated and so different dated most likely through one of the like birds like in the spring that are step like we through poison and so like that's the law of like stands happening like with narrative that about so at that point I'm not trying lack for lack adapt to that but like they assume blindly assume that it might be the work of like a Robert other brother so like that way continuous direction to the for like even up like the eventual laws of like standards like and so the thing why and that I couldn't remember at that point would be under like to be under like blind assumption that like Robert other brother like the like even at that point I'm not trying the last still the last thing that I was wanting at that point would be for like Joffrey to that be the next king. It's definitely my favorite. So definitely even in such a situation of playing like head down like still preparing like Robert like other brother or Joffrey. to taking like the position of that, being like some sort of like Robert Smith, which is not that alone. So like that way, I'm going to bring it up, taking steps to that to ensure that Robert, that other Robert ends up becoming like the next thing. And at that point, I'm going to try for like adopting like most likely approach to the and most likely integrate. I can feel like integrate Cersei by most likely telling Cersei that like if Cersei declares that Joffrey as like the next king. Uh, at that point, in front of them, everyone like Kendall will be revealing that the sequence between that Jamie and Sophie to be along the night and go to pick it up like at that point, debating Sophie and like it's like this now that I'm going to say like at that point I'm going to bring like Sophie and to be disturbed yet like I'm going to bring and like Sophie knows only telling about that to like Jamie like now it's done about so that I'm going to bring even and at that point I'm going to bring maybe Jamie Stephanie I can think to like bring down and before like the next king declaration ceremony they before that day like maybe Jamie Stephanie might like bring down and that is like there are no one all those attempts of like they need to break down kind of like failing with like this now celebrate and that way like I'm totally still I'm totally daily at that point telling Sophie that like even after in fact like uh as to chicken race black till even at that point absolutely no really had to be an organized black and different black so daily at that point trying to give that to be given that to be confident about and give that confidence I don't really like give that on to like to feel like now that it's also feel really long feeling if you just at that point saying now that so like at that point on the day of like the declaration of like the next thing and like somebody declaring topic and like and declaring that other Robert like now that so like at that point I'm really trying for like everyone to be again that and after that point and after this and that point like it's not that I'm just thinking that because we like the input like everyone is so big like something system or enough system then it's not that so like at that point I'm not thinking from like everyone like enough like revealing like the big between Jamie and Sophie. And at that point, like I was like even telling about like the blonde hair background husband of like your faces when you spend now it's that like so and like the display is like now that but like even at that point I'm looking like for like everyone was fair that and for different to real of flying to like the things that could happen you saying and like and they all are like nothing to them when we get up trying to like retain the thoughts you retain like something and like Jamie to be along the lines of thing that everyone straight away that the executive planning straight away after the executive now straight away like like them all siding with like something and like something straight away declaring like job because like the next thing and like so at that point I thought the one like that was really winning the even like I'm feeling job at that point as well like they are all not all believing it and they see to be feeling up to the prevent iteration and like that and like like the moment like certainly that they finally declaring like to operate like the next thing and like to operate and with the act of them right like the like the next thing planning at that point still not the moment so it becomes like the next thing and to operate that point straight away giving that absolute punishment to like it out for like retaining like assessing maintaining like it's not that I'm looking so but yeah it's like it out straight away like the moment so they will becoming like the next thing like I'm so different it's like in the scenario that I'm in. So like at that point, it becomes like the fixed way giving the cost to that put it up into that kind of space. And maybe at that point, I'm not looking for like the page or the new to like contain this like a page towards like the dumb that like your page maybe also down the internet and then like that way your page so big to even surface job like and bring that to at that point they making that that declaration and for to like have that the army of like landing to that set of for like the entirety of the charming the things landing to that set off to that kind of well to that destroy kind of and basically capture that and so that the family from that kind of and basically to have the and like the things sliding to be along the length and of the platform that we can try to work at that point and given the on the like it's not planable. So like that way I'm going like an individual balance as well actually happening between that between like the thing of planning farming as well as like the win of the farming. Since that the scenario that I'm taking and definitely I'm looking for like most likely a delay a serious delay happening to that the right army in like making it towards like getting landing with like like the future like the knowledge like this like the scenario that the account for the friends for like the Prakya actually waiting until like like then have some to basically to only that like continue the journey to like getting landing stuff in so like so the time period is when the things like the back and then battle between like the army expecting the landing and like the army and like digital really happening at like the army and expecting landing winning that battle and basically the and that way like that's like family being being taken captive and being really lost to and person in like the it's landing kind of like the doctor is like that we can scenario that I'm going to and that is again. Then that way I'm totally playing eventually once like the Patraki army would be eventually making it towards like the King's Landing and like one like the battle there would be given like I'm totally playing maybe possibly only at that point that like I'm part of like that battle taking place like the King's Landing and totally playing as part of like the destruction which I'm totally playing at that point if we take happening to like the King's Landing as part of like that battle I'm totally playing that resulting in like it up getting freed and like it up managing like free push like family and like adopt and this like family managing to take advantage of that whole bad situation and like things landing to just get that way I'm bring maybe for like adopt and this like family eventually and after like escaping from like after like escaping from the freaking landing like then taking seeking refuge at like and like an effect only in the this might have enmity towards like second planning the demon spirit. So like the demon spirit right now we are for maybe of like about to go like in that the very step with the the white water actually managing to that and white water means like them to putting man managing like accelerate into and enter into like the war and basically they are like at the for example at that point like the white water bring down almost everyone and like the serving at the Chennai once at that point. Maybe at that point, like very few managing to like escape and maybe like like Sam managing to like doing that as good everything like badly back, but like I'm focusing. Still, I'm focusing like them getting traveling or third by like in the afternoon like twice over time like those communities, as well as like Sam really has no other option but like being forced to like escape or like maybe like in Naratan and to like then escaping and maybe ending up in like some remote village like a remote location and like they are like a programming for like Sam to eventually fall in love their like scenario that about but like at that point I'm not friends Snow telling Sam about the vows and their release. At that point like Sam was like telling Snow that basically that was all way back and like the war next the war to no more and basically that basically the relevance of like the vows have been that way with that the vows have been that way has lost like it's like a relevance to their own line like Sam telling Snow and basically Sam that way falling in love and basically eventually I'm notifying that as like journey that way from the that is really like the good feeling that they believe that everything has changed like really it's not dropped to like hold on to like the past that they believe so many things have changed it's like life and then so during that point I'm notifying falling in love like now then so like during this time I'm notifying that Sam finally succeeding in like convincing to like give up on like the boss and it leads that eventually come down to that such a conclusion that like of like the boss he made all the way at like the war which by then would have been in like that actual infiltrated and destroyed kind of like state like has like no more relevance and it leads eventually like the very recently that I'm going to find that giving up on this black boss and most likely getting married like the relationship with the Western that I'm going to the bring maybe of like the positive text most journey to getting all the way up to like the point where like most eventually even ending up becoming like the king of that from the kingdom. And at that point I'm noticing of like Sam to be like the command like the king, like we are whispering in like the future that he was like the white war like destroying completely destroying like the half ring and that way I'm totally correct that the destruction of that the heart ring usually happening in like the and that to be foreshadowing the symbolic foreshadowing kind of like scenario eventually like foreshadowing like Sam as well as like giving up on their power like this thing where it is into the like the scenario that I'm looking for thing and I'm totally going to be like in a case of case for like Sam and Pulam, definitely my experience that I'm sitting So like I believe my particular ambition right now, or like it might be most likely unfulfilled and itself. So like the believe my particular ambition right now that like they wish me to most likely die and like the city watching my kid definitely it's really afraid to like even stand against like the king. Definitely my particular ambition. So definitely I'm trying like the secret deal might be agreement might just not by parents and like the city wants might be to that until the time comes for like the city wants to like certain that basically they are on side of it but like once the time comes for them to like betray and side with like the army of that planning to be along the lines and different army of to be along the lines and different most likely Bearish might have struck a secret deal at agreement like city was might be like actually against the clear memory. So the clear right now self that can like job most likely yeah, like the king lacks the very most important of like job and different to be most likely a demand, which might be most likely from different job retailing and down to the great delay job that like who wants to like manage and for like adapt to like uh, right now itself like without wasting without any delay at all like for adapt to like that raven to like philanthropy telling some to like return back to like the planning and like at the earliest stages and like jobbing it's going to like manage and to be along the line number one like think of making like declaration to like set up the second scenario that I'm at that point I'm going to bring like that to be like the last thing that would be want to select it up definitely family or a few things and at that point I'm going to bring for like your way to like be able to like believe that like and that actually propose like the thing orders definitely might have been able to do like job window the name of the thing but we have to bring that job at that point telling head up that basically it like head up like agree to like the thing of it for then like head up would have instead to like take on like the things army to be along the lines of something like the office like head up and that way like head up like the other like the city wants can be and soon as like things of it like army like thing of landing army will be going up to that like the city was at that point still on the spring like the city was like taking that up during the trail and siding him with like the team of like the with like the army of like the England. So like at that point itself I'm okay different for like change your page like no technically just on to like capture adapt and put adapt take adapt as like you know like things like it's now kind of so, like that way adapt being put into like a kind of state and like at that point itself I'm going like your page really many time and basically something might be aware of like basically the army of like private land stuff like getting ready you know like gaming to things like launch the battle at like end of the Subliminal credit. So subliminal different like so thing job name was different along with like time plan just like army like a different like six of declaring that like the army of like the king landing as well join that and they and for them for the army to like definitely ensure to like definitely bring like not just transact but also like carry on as well especially to be around the line like the job rate like order to be like the scenario than problem because like company of still demand that like job rate even though the person might out and gain out for about like carry on and what the job rate and definitely to like job rate definitely will bring so definitely I'm bring like job rate might be like probably the try to get that as well think job rate might be the find out the try to get that as even again like carry on certainly going to bring but so definitely I'm bring like job rate even the order to like also bring back carry on with like having this intent is mind about which like a different neither the taking of Jane might be other so like that we understand Jamie and like then the army getting off and but like conduct after the so bring that the army quickly getting defeated with like certain that I'm doing. By now about my tell stated about like the integration by like again about like carry on having left certainly and I got kids certainly on so yeah like I'm saying like Jamie's like army not sure believing her off and like assuming that they have hidden and potentially on somewhere of the like Islamic that or so like that again army that they take now the race of that not being able to find not being able to like find their own what that we by destroying with a film by most likely not only capturing and bring possibly bringing sunset on but like maybe that taking bringing that interactive that adults that family to like the in any person that stage to like the thing landing it's like this to scenario kind of prototyping and that way I'm looking for like for Tyrion as well as Catelyn now prototyping or like Catelyn before Kevin would be make it back to that friend of a number when that Kevin while getting close to that friend of a number when Kevin realizing that it's not the same of the landing. So like and that's when so different from like Kevin to be as good embrace and like according to that vaccine and basically save some family. But like at that point I'm from different for like exactly for the Catholics that personal guard that I'm going to confirm likely succeeding in like managing that content get the gadget that is me gathering what's the thing to like the film like gathering as well will be getting captured and like nothing would be useful would be coming out of that. But like Catholics avoid captivity that at least they have a chance to like selfie. Attempts to like save Catholic family to their own land like Catherine to be telling the freedom dream. So like that I'm referring like Catherine giving captivity and I'm referring the case of like Tyrion as well. By the time like Tyrion along with that Tyrion's like front to fought for like Tyrion that while by the time both of them could be nearing to that looking planning about like them realizing finding out about like or hearing about like the news about like Joffrey having become like having became like the new king and like his planning. So like at that point of game like Tyrion definitely sent it that after his father and like Tyrion deciding to like not return to like king planning and like Tyrion managing to like uh for like the time being Tyrion managed to like escape to like somewhere else then now it's kind of different. So like that way I'm different like Sansa as well as like the last family and their family imprisoned at like sitting planning is like changing now it's like a different yet like even at that point I'm different and like a different possibly that for like Joffrey as to the philosophy as the meant to like conduct like the marriage that uh, Joffrey and like Sansa while like the remaining of like the family will be in that kind of state like so scenario remaining of like the family will be in that kind of state like in things like this now it's kind of different but like even at that point I'm different like in Joffrey to like not being able to like contain his rage and if there's not like not being able to get your hands on being able to like capture Tyrion. So like at that point I'm not thinking Joffrey or in Joffrey like getting a bunch of the black top army meant to that most likely to that as soon as possible so and find to look for and search and find and bring that Tyrion. So this will that right of need right of Tyrion listen right now but me for that Joffrey right now is about to bring to be shouting out to that day to let's say deliberate down and down but like at that point still on the bring like but the managing to like stop Joffrey like was not that and those things. So see most likely at that point telling Joffrey that like they have to make it up stuff up for like everything adapted to be along the lines like I'm one of the legit man of like something change it managing to like change Joffrey's last position and basically at that point like Joffrey most likely gives the order to capture Kedar and put Kedar into like a kind of like state as a fitting side reflecting now that I'm bring an office sharing.